We didn't have the full discussion today, and part of the intention of that was to review the guidelines for developing the 09-010 budget, establish a framework, for moving forward. I also think part of the problem in the past, there's been too little involvement by the board beginning early on, and so I think we need to discuss strategies for how we can have greater ongoing board involvement, not just at a meeting that happens every 2 months. And so whether that is referring more items to the General Government Committee to have them take more of a hands-on approach, or whether it's adopting Supervisor Smith's suggestion of a Finance Committee, I think we need to find a way to get at least 2 of us to the table on an ongoing basis instead of just sitting here being fed information in a reactive mode.
March 3rd work?
Sure.
Well, comment to that. First of all, when it comes to the budget process and bookkeeping, you got to know where you are before you can start talking about where you're going. And that's why it's so important to get this 08-09 budget, and because there's a big difference if we're going to start out with a budget deficit of $1 million or a $2 or a $3 million. There's a big difference in telling our CEO's office and their budget people of how to build a budget if you're going to have a zero fund balance or if you're going to have a negative fund balance. So we need to really, that's why I feel it's time we need to get honed in on this existing budget we're in to where we know we're going to end up before, so we can give the budget people, basically Jennifer and her helpers, the direction of where to go into the 9-10. So until because we're, $1 million, $2 million, we're kind of vague at this point here. So we need to hone in a little closer.
To Supervisor McCowan's point, though, I think if we finish the work we started here today on March 3rd, segues into the rest of the discussion that we didn't occur today, and then that makes it timely, and we're doing both.
Well, I think we're going to have a lot of budget discussion. I mean, you can't talk about our discussion today actually had a lot to do with the 9-10 budget. There's no doubt.
But I think his
that.
point was he doesn't want time to go by, so if we continued it only 1 week, then it's staff knows it's coming forward next week, and we'll get going. So is that
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Well, next week is the 3rd, and
Right.
We're going to be talking about a lot. We've just gave direction for about 5 departments to come in.
Okay.
Supervisor Brown?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I want to support, I was about ready to speak on the concept of a finance committee. Also, general government is another ad hoc or standing committee, actually, that could address some of these issues. But I do think it's important. I think it's our responsibility to follow this out, set our goals for the coming year, talk about where we want to go from there. I also think whatever committee we decide to assign it, contracts and how they're handled, new hires, I think we need to look at all that. We're ultimately responsible.
I don't support putting the budget process in a committee because for number one reason, I want to be fully involved. And the budget, in my opinion, and I've said it many times, is not just a set of numbers. It's the work plan for the year ahead for the county. And I want to be completely involved in the work plan. If it's put in committee, that by being chair, that means I'm not going to be involved in it. And I want to be involved from the start, to the end. So, and I think it's important. That is the work that this board needs to be done, and so I think all 5 board members need to be done. And if it takes an extra day or an extra 10 days throughout the year to do it, I think that that's our main job to do, is the budget. So that's one issue. Committees are set up, ad hoc committees, standing committees are basically set up to set certain issues that are subset of what we deal with aside. But when it comes to the budget and all the departments, that's involvement of this full board, and I want to keep this full board totally involved in that. So I do not support the concept of
Mr. Chair, I do agree with you that all 5 should be involved, but we had some special, or we made points of what a finance committee should be looking into early on, so I'll go back on those minutes and bring them forward on the 3rd.
Now, if you want a committee, say for instance, a committee based on, okay, we want to look into revenue enhancements, I would support that. That's a specific part of the budget. But just to say we're going to put the budget process in committee, I do not support. Supervisor McCowan.
Well, obviously, we all need to be very involved in the budget process, but I think we can supplement that, because if you look at the current budget calendar after today, the next time it's before us is April 7th.
No, the next time it's before us next week.
Yes, because we didn't get through our work today. But the point is, even take it to March 3rd, that's a full month until April 7th, and what happens in the interim. And then after April 7th, the next scheduled board item is May 19th.
But
So
Supervisor,
I think that we could establish a system that will have greater involvement, and it's fine with me if you're one of the people primarily involved, but who could perhaps actually become part of the budget team, so that they hear a lot more of the discussion that is the lead-up to what we're presented with. Because then we would have at least two people that would be much more fully informed on all the nuances of the information that was being presented to us and the options, instead of only hearing the boiled-down version. And I think there could be a real value in that.
yeah, but Supervisor, under our new agenda, since I took chair January, the first week in January, we have put under there a part under the CEO's report, a budget update. So
That's an update.
Well, we do have the and that can lead to discussion or any direction that we move into. So we do have the opportunity on every board meeting we meet to talk about the budget, whether it's a state budget effects, whether it's our local budget, or the impacts or any part of that. So we do have the opportunity
Yes,
to
but
talk on any given Tuesday.
But everything is filtered through one lens.
No, that doesn't keep any board member from questions or bringing up an issue or.
Well, that's not the same as being at the table when the product
Let's try to get
is
some
being made.
consensus on this
Yeah.
instead of back and forth between
Yeah.
the two. Thank you.
So, Allison, you want to say something real quick?
Well, if I could just offer that that was part of the intent of the next part of the discussion around the 2009-10 budget process, was to be able to have the kind of discussion you're starting now about board involvement and how that would work and how you would want the communication to take place, et cetera. That's all part of the guidelines and the priorities, et cetera. So maybe that discussion could happen on March 3rd. I'm assuming absent direction from, well, your direction would be, I think, that we're going to continue to finish our presentation next week.
What I would hope to see come from the CEO's office when it comes to this budget issue, all of these budget issues, is some clear recommendations from the CEO's office. The board may or may not pick the recommendations or may have variations to the recommendations, but I would like to see some clear recommendations on, this is the recommendation that the CEO's office thinks that this board should go. The board may not go that way, but I would like to see some clear recommendations coming from the CEO's office on some of these
Right, so
budget
whatever
decisions.
direction you want to give us.
Do I have the consensus of the board on that? No? You don't want to see clear recommendations coming from the CEO's office?
That goes without saying. I mean, but you got to back.
Well, I don't think it goes without saying, because I haven't seen the clear recommendations.
Yeah, I'm all for
Mr.
clear
Chair, I think
communication.
this is part of our March 3rd discussion.
think so.
Yes.
Okay, Jennifer?
I just have one more thing to add. We can do whatever the board decides and wishes, as far as budget process. As Ms. Glassy said, in the 2009-10 budget, we were planning on having that discussion about priorities. The reason why it's so important to have that discussion at this early in the game, and this is the kickoff date for today, is because in a few weeks, we're going to be handing out strategies and implementations for the budget instructions on March 11th.
Right.
That's not that far away. We need to have these priorities that the board has directed this office to implement, carry out, and continue in our budget process. Sending it off to a committee, putting it into the general government, et cetera, doesn't allow us the time frame at this point, but we can bend whatever way you want as to how